All right, so Bitcoin, right. Everyone wants to know, is it going to hit that magic $100,000 mark, especially in the next few months?
It's definitely the question on everyone's mind.
We did a deep dive into a podcast episode that's asking that very question. Will Bitcoin hit $100K in the coming months?
Catchy title.
And it's a wild ride, let me tell you.
I
Some
agree.
really interesting insights into market trends and, some educated guesses.
It is fascinating to see how Bitcoin's price has almost mirrored its acceptance over time.
Yeah.
Like, remember last year when it almost hit $70,000?
Yeah,
I mean, that was a crazy time.
it was. It kind of felt like, oh, wow, this is really happening.
Exactly.
But then, of course, it went down, which is kind of the nature of the beast.
Yeah, that's Bitcoin for you.
So hitting $100,000 in the coming months, that's a whole other story.
That's a whole other level.
What are the experts saying about the chances of that actually happening?
Well, one of the biggest arguments for a Bitcoin surge is all this institutional investment.
Right.
It's not just individuals anymore.
Yeah.
We're talking about big players like Tesla and MicroStrategy.
Yeah, they're stocking up on Bitcoin like it's going out of style.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's the bigger implication of companies like Tesla getting into the Bitcoin game? Why does that matter so much?
Tesla's move was huge because they weren't just buying Bitcoin.
Right.
They were actually accepting it as payment
Oh, wow, yeah.
for their cars.
Right.
That sent a massive signal to the market that Bitcoin could be a legitimate currency.
Yeah, that's a huge vote of confidence.
Huge. And other companies started to take notice.
It's not just about the investment then. It's about changing how we think about spending, right? Like using it in everyday life.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's one piece of the puzzle. What else are the experts looking at?
Well, you can't forget about Bitcoin's limited supply.
Right.
Only 21 million Bitcoins will ever exist.
That's it, huh?
That's
You
it.
knew it.
No more.
Yeah, that scarcity definitely makes it more attractive, especially when more and more people want it.
Exactly. It's like having a VIP pass to a very exclusive club.
The fewer spots there are, the more valuable they become.
Exactly.
And unlike with stocks, Bitcoin's value isn't tied to a company's performance or anything like that.
It's all about the network itself.
The network.
Yeah, it's about the decentralized consensus of all its users. That's what makes it so unique and potentially game-changing.
Okay, so we've got big companies investing, we've got limited supply, we've got this decentralized system. Sounds pretty good so far. But what about governments?
Ah, yes. The governments.
They haven't always been Bitcoin's biggest cheerleaders, have they?
That's one of the big question marks hanging over Bitcoin's future. Government regulation.
Yeah, because they could really make things difficult, couldn't they?
Exactly.
Like, what kind of things are we talking about here?
Well, we've seen countries go back and forth, embracing Bitcoin one minute and then cracking down on it the next.
Oh, wow. So it's kind of unpredictable.
It creates a lot of uncertainty for investors, that's for sure.
It's like trying to hit a moving target.
Yeah, exactly. You think you figured it out, and then bam, the rules change.
How do these regulatory roller coasters actually affect Bitcoin's price? Like, what's the connection?
Think about it this way. If you're thinking about investing in a company and you keep hearing conflicting reports about whether it's even legal,
Yeah.
you'd probably hesitate, right?
Makes sense.
Same thing with Bitcoin.
So uncertainty leads to volatility. Makes sense. But what about positive regulation? Could that help Bitcoin's price?
Absolutely. Clear, supportive regulations could give investors a lot more confidence.
Right.
It would show that governments are taking Bitcoin seriously, which could attract even more big investors and really drive that price up.
So regulation is a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It can either boost Bitcoin or hold it back.
Exactly. It all depends on how governments decide to play their cards.
Speaking of things that could impact Bitcoin's price, what about the technology itself? Are there any advancements on the horizon that could make a difference?
That's a key point. You can't talk about Bitcoin's future without considering how the technology is developing.
Okay, give us an example.
Take the Lightning Network, for instance.
Okay, the Lightning Network. What's that all about?
It aims to solve some of Bitcoin's limitations, like making transactions faster and cheaper.
Faster and cheaper, always a good thing. But let's break it down for the everyday person. What does the Lightning Network actually do, and why should I care?
Right now, using Bitcoin for everyday transactions can be a bit clunky.
Clunky how?
The fees can be high, and it can take a while for transactions to go through.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
The Lightning Network basically acts as a second layer on top of the Bitcoin blockchain.
Oh, interesting.
And that allows for almost instant transactions with a super low fees.
So imagine, I'm at a coffee shop, I want to pay with Bitcoin.
Oh.
No more waiting around for ages for the transaction to go through.
Exactly. It would be practically instantaneous.
Wow, okay, and it's not just about speed, is it?
Right. The Lightning Network also opens the door to something called micropayments,
Micropayment.
meaning you could use Bitcoin to pay for things like online content, maybe even tiny fractions of a cent for streaming services.
So we're talking about paying for things that would have been too expensive or just impossible with Bitcoin before.
Exactly. It expands the possibilities of what you can do with Bitcoin.
So if this Lightning Network thing takes off, could that actually push Bitcoin's price higher?
It definitely has the potential. The easier it is to use Bitcoin for everyday purchases, the more appealing it becomes to everyone.
Right, it becomes more mainstream.
Exactly. And as we talked about before, more adoption usually means more demand.
And more demand usually means higher prices.
Exactly.
All right, so far we've talked about institutional adoption, the limited supply, government regulation, and new technologies like the Lightning Network, all impacting Bitcoin's price.
A lot of factors in the mix.
It's a complex picture.
Yeah.
Anything else people should be paying attention to as they try to figure out where Bitcoin is headed?
Well, you definitely can't underestimate the power of social media, especially when it comes to someone like Elon Musk.
Oh yeah, good old Elon.
He has a way of shaking things up, that's for sure.
One tweet from him and the whole crypto world goes crazy.
Right. Whether he's praising Bitcoin or promoting Dogecoin, people listen.
It's like he's the conductor of the crypto orchestra.
In a way, yeah.
But his influence highlights something important. Don't base your investment decisions solely on what you see on social media.
Right. It's important to keep a cool head.
Emotions run high,
Yeah.
and prices can go up and down like a roller coaster just based on hype and speculation.
Do your research, make informed decisions, and don't get caught up in the frenzy.
All right, so summing up what we've learned so far, Bitcoin could reach $100,000, but the path ahead is definitely not a straight line.
There are a lot of moving pieces.
We've got all these factors at play, some pushing the price up, others potentially pulling it back down.
That's the beauty of it, though, isn't it?
The unpredictable nature of it all.
Yeah. It's a constant tug of war between innovation, economics, and even the whims of social media.
So where do we go from here? What are the big questions our listeners should be thinking about as they try to navigate this crazy crypto world?
That's a great question. I think it's important to remember. That investing in anything, especially something as volatile as Bitcoin, requires careful consideration and a solid understanding of the risks.
It's not just about jumping on the bandwagon.
Definitely not. It's about making informed decisions. Take some time to really learn about the technology, the market dynamics, the potential downsides.
Don't just blindly follow what you see trending on Twitter or Reddit, right?
Exactly. Do your research, understand your own risk tolerance, and never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Solid advice for anyone thinking about dipping their toes into the Bitcoin waters. But let's say someone is interested in Bitcoin's potential beyond just how much it's worth. What are some of the bigger implications if a decentralized currency like Bitcoin really becomes mainstream?
That's where things get really fascinating. If Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies become widely accepted as payment,
Yeah,
it could have huge implications for traditional financial systems.
like really shake things up.
Potentially disrupt them completely. Think about it. Bitcoin operates independently of central banks and governments.
Right.
That decentralized nature could challenge the existing power structures in the financial world.
So it's not just about the money, it's about a potential shift in how we think about and manage money.
Exactly. And that opens up a whole bunch of other questions.
Like what?
Well, what happens to monetary policy if central banks have less control? How do we address concerns about illicit activities if transactions are harder to track?
Wow, those are some big, hairy questions. Sounds like the rise of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies could have far-reaching consequences beyond just the ups and downs of the market.
Absolutely. These are conversations we need to be having now as this technology keeps evolving and gaining traction.
It's almost like we're at a crossroads. We can either ignore the potential impact of cryptocurrencies or embrace the challenge and figure out what it all means.
I couldn't agree more. It's an exciting and transformative time, and it's crucial for both individuals and societies to engage with these new technologies thoughtfully and critically.
So to sum it all up, the question of whether Bitcoin will hit $100,000 is just one small piece of a much larger and more complex puzzle.
A puzzle where the pieces are always shifting and evolving. What we know for sure is that Bitcoin and the whole cryptocurrency landscape are forces to be reckoned with. They have the potential to reshape our financial systems, our relationship with money, and even our understanding of power and control.
Sounds like we're just at the beginning of a wild ride.
Indeed. And the most fascinating chapters are yet to be written.
So what can our listeners do to stay informed and make sense of this rapidly changing world? It all feels pretty overwhelming sometimes.
The most important thing is to stay curious. Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep asking questions. The world of cryptocurrency is full of passionate people, groundbreaking innovations, and thought-provoking discussions. Don't be afraid to dive in and see where it takes you.
It's like stepping into a whole new universe with its own rules and possibilities, waiting to be explored.
Exactly. And who knows what incredible discoveries await those who are brave enough to explore.
And remember, this is just a snapshot in time.
That's right.
The crypto world moves fast.
It does.
So what's true today might be ancient history by tomorrow.
That's a crucial point. The information we've discussed is based on current trends, but the crypto landscape is constantly evolving. New technologies, regulations, and market dynamics can pop up practically overnight.
So how can our listeners stay informed and avoid getting caught off guard?
I'd recommend following reputable sources of information. There are excellent websites, podcasts, and newsletters out there that provide really in-depth analysis and insights into the crypto world.
Any favorites you want to shout out?
I'd rather not play favorites, but I'm sure your listeners can find some great resources with a little digging. And of course, always be critical of what you read and hear. Don't just accept everything at face value. Do your own research and form your own conclusions.
So navigating the crypto world requires a healthy dose of skepticism and a commitment to continuous learning.
Precisely. It's not a spectator sport. It's about actively engaging with the information, questioning assumptions, and always seeking new knowledge. That's how you stay ahead of the curve.
So to wrap things up, it seems like Bitcoin's journey to $100,000 or any price point is a complex story with no guaranteed ending.
Exactly. It's a story full of potential and uncertainty, innovation, and risk. And the most exciting part is that the story is still being written. We all have a chance to participate in how this all plays out.
What a thought. And on that note, we'll leave you with one final question to ponder. What if Bitcoin does become as common as using your credit card? What happens to the big guys, the banks, the governments? How do they fit into this new world?
That's the question, isn't it? Bitcoin challenges the way we've always thought about finance because it's decentralized.
Right.
It's like dropping a new species into an ecosystem. Things are going to have to adjust.
Yeah, some might not even survive the change.
It's-
It's hard to even imagine the scale of how this could all play out. Are we talking about a slow evolution, or could it be a sudden earthquake that changes everything?
It's hard to predict, and that's what makes it so fascinating. Could be a gradual thing, with Bitcoin slowly becoming more accepted alongside traditional systems.
Yeah.
Or it could be a rapid disruption that completely flips the script. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, no matter what, it's going to be interesting to watch it all unfold. And for our listener who's wondering about Bitcoin hitting $100,000, that might just be a small blip on the radar compared to the bigger picture.
Absolutely. That price target, while interesting, doesn't even scratch the surface of what Bitcoin represents. It's about changing how we think about money, value, and control.
It's been amazing exploring all of this with you.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking us on this deep dive into the world of Bitcoin.
My pleasure. And to our listener, remember, stay curious, keep learning, and don't be afraid to question everything. The future of finance is being shaped right now,